Hi everybody, this is Neshe Grossman. The only reason I agreed to do this, and I was asked yesterday, was because of my mother's yard site, which is Chaf Hei Iyar, and I thought in schus of her neshama, my mother Chanabas Rabbi Avram should have an aliyah. So I'm talking about Pesach Sheini. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says, Nishtoken verfallen. I know that there is such a thing as verfallen. In my house, it's a given as verfallen. You know, you lost your wallet, verfallen. You missed the bus, verfallen. I also knew that if you really wanted, then you could actually take the next bus or go look for your wallet. Or I had a story where I was like 12 or 13 years old, and I saw this little throwaway newspaper. There was an ad for a typewriter. May's department store, which probably doesn't exist, which was on Flatbush Avenue, had a sale. If you turned in your old non-electric, because back then most people didn't have electric, typewriter, then you could get a new electric typewriter for $25, or maybe it was $35, but it was really cheap at the time, you know, even for those days. And I was very excited. I said, oh, I want that deal. The only thing is that it was on Shabbos. The sale was on Shabbos. So what did I do? I got on the bus. I was, back then, 13-year-olds or 12-year-olds, we would take the city bus or the train or whatever it was. I think it was the train, actually. I got on the train. I went to May's department store with the little ad, and I said, look, I want this deal. Tomorrow is Shabbos, and we are Sabbath observant. I'm a religious Jew. I can't do this tomorrow. Can you honor this on Sunday? Or Monday or whenever. I think it was Sunday. And the owner of the store, they brought out the manager of the store, and the manager of the store said, sure. He wrote me like a little note, and he told me to come look for him. And I think I had to come on Monday, and I did. And I brought in my old broken typewriter from our house, and I traded it in for this nice electric typewriter. So I guess if you really want, you can get it. And that's really what the story was with Pesach Sheini. The Yidden were complaining to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, hey, you know, we want that chance. We were tamei, we couldn't do it. You need to give us another chance. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, you know, I'm going to ask Hashem, and it comes back and it says, yes, here you have Pesach Sheini. So one would think that maybe on Pesach Sheini, the opportunity is there, but maybe it's not as great as if you did it the first time around. So actually there's a mimer where the Rebbe says, no, actually the opposite. We would think that, or it's also in Chassidus and says places that Nisan is the month of Nisim, and Iyar is the month of Tshuva. So the Nisim is greater than the Tshuva. But the Rebbe shows that actually, not necessarily, and actually the Iyar is greater than Nisan, and Pesach Sheini is greater than Pesach Rishon. The avodah of Chodesh Nisan was hiskafia. They had to bend away the evil. The avodah was Yetzias Mitzrayim. They went out of Mitzrayim. They had to get away from the evil. They had to push away the evil and get onto a higher level. Of course, they had the help of the Aryan Sof. But when you get to the month of Iyar, it was his hapcha. They had to convert. They had to transform every single day the evil into holiness. And this, when they're counting the Omer, it's unique because every single day there is the mitzvah of counting the Omer, and they have the ability to do the transformation. And also the Yidden were being counted in the month of Iyar. So every single day, the Yidden were also being transformed into holiness. And so that makes the month of Iyar more holy than the month of Nisan. Also, by Korban Pesach in the month of Nisan, of course, that the Korban Pesach, there was a leap, and the holiness, they were able to leap way over all the levels of holiness to get to a much higher level. But when they got to Pesach Sheini, because they were already in a higher level month, because Iyar was already higher level, so even there was also a very big leap, but the leap was even higher than the leap in Chodesh Nisan. So the month of Iyar and Pesach Sheini, actually, according to this Maimer, is a higher level than regular Pesach and the regular chants, because you would think that according to normal circumstances, that the first time around is holier. So the Rebbe explains in the Smimer, actually the second time around is holier. And this is compared to a Baal Tshuva who transformed himself. Regular, some people were just born holy and they were holy, and some people were born not so holy and they transformed themselves, and that was a higher level. And a Baal Tshuva is constantly improving himself, is constantly transforming himself. And it's interesting because when I just got engaged to my husband, my grandmother said to him that, by us, by uns, wir nehmen Geborene, nicht kun Geborene. Probably heard the story. By us, we take those who became, not those who were born. And it was a big compliment for my husband because he was, he became. But basically, her parents, if you look back in history, even though they came from all these big chassidim, but everybody was really a gevarener. Everybody was, somebody who transformed himself and became who they were, even though they were big chassidim and they came from holy places, but they pretty much had to transform themselves. And going back to Russia, when I think about the word that the Rebbeim used as nishtoken farfallen, I think about the times when this was said. I feel like it was a word of comfort. People were farfallen. People were lost. Their lives were destroyed. They had no food. They were dying of hunger. They couldn't keep their religion. They were being, kids were sent to the army and never came back. Their lives were miserable. We're not even talking about, some people, today we have Corona. People are stuck in their houses. They lost their jobs. A lot of people are feeling horrible today. And can you imagine what was going on then when they didn't even see a light out of their window? They couldn't imagine what was going to happen tomorrow. My mother, her family, every single day were worried that their father wouldn't be arrested. My grandfather from my father's side was arrested and murdered. And basically, I feel like when the Frierdiker Rebbe said, nishtoken farfallen, it was almost like a word of comfort. Don't think it's farfallen. It's not farfallen. Everything is, there's still a second chance. You can still make it work. And when I think about the kind of life that my father had after his father was murdered and his brother was murdered, he was running this underground yeshiva in Kutayis, and they were in danger every day of being arrested, of being killed, they didn't even have food. The Bachrim, how could you run a yeshiva? These guys, if they would find out, these guys would be drafted to the army. They're running an underground yeshiva. And every day was probably one of those days where they would think, how are we going to survive the next day? And it got to a point where my father would have to travel from one city to another to figure out where to get food, figure out where to get money to help these Bachrim. And one day he finds out that the NKVD is looking for him. And because they found that they know about him, they heard about him. He he went to one place and he found out that NKVD just left, and then he went to another place, he found out NKVD just left. They were basically looking for him. The good thing is that they didn't really know how old he was. They were looking for an old man, and he was a young man because he had a beard. But he knew he had to dismantle the yeshiva because eventually they'll find him. So what does he do? He writes a letter to Neshe, who had a yeshiva in Samarkand, and asks him if he can take these bachrim. He had, maybe there were 12 bachrim, 15 bachrim, I don't know. And some of them were young. They were 15-year-olds or 14-year-olds. And so he gets a letter. So basically, Neshe had his own problems. He had his own yeshiva that he had to worry about, and bachrim that he had to feed and hide the way he was hiding. And so my father decided that, listen, these bachrim are going to be farfallen. He has to figure it out. So basically, he decided to trick him. And he divided up the bachrim, sent them all out to different cities, and they had a plan. Every 2 weeks, 2 bachrim from a city up north would write a letter to Neshe that they are stuck in the city and they have no food and they want to come to the yeshiva. Could they come? And he'd say yes, and then they'd come. Then 2 weeks later, another 2 bachrim from the south would write a letter to Neshe that they're stuck in this place and they have nowhere to go and nothing to eat, and could they come? And then Neshe said they can come. And my father did that with like several groups, and somehow that's how he unloaded the yeshiva onto Neshe in Samarkand. So they always found a way. It also happens to be that Yud Gimel Iyar is the Rebbe's brother's yahrzeit, Yisrael Aryeh Leib, who's buried in Sfas. He used to live in Liverpool, England, and he was a mathematical genius. And there was a clip where the Rebbe had given Professor Rosenblum some of his charts or documents or something to review, and Professor Rosenblum said, these are like publish worthy, they should be published. And the Rebbe said, could you do me a favor and have them published? And the only thing is that Professor Rosenblum said, but they're really not complete. And the Rebbe says, but it's my brother's. He said it's his brother's and he's deceased. Can I pay you or pay one of your students to complete it and then have them published? And it's interesting that the Rebbe wanted them published and completed even after his brother had passed away. So I guess that that was probably important for his neshama. Also, when his brother had passed away, the Rebbe was very careful not to let his mother know. And apparently Rabbi Yoel Khan had some memoirs, his own diaries that he had written, and he didn't understand why the Rebbe was so quiet and he wasn't coming out of his room. The Rebbe didn't want to tell anybody that he was sitting Shiva. He needed to tell somebody because he needed somebody to say Kaddish for him. He just didn't want his mother to know. And then he would take his sneakers and painted them. Back then, the sneakers, you couldn't just buy black sneakers. Well, sneakers, I guess, were white. He had painted them black so he can go visit his mother, because he was in Shiva, he had to wear sneakers. And he put raw beans in his sneakers. They should be uncomfortable. And he'd go visit his mother so she shouldn't know that he's sitting Shiva. And then he had arranged for somebody to call his mother. And so his mother would get on the phone and say hello, and they'd say, oh, you're busy, and then he was able to leave, so he didn't have to sit during Shiva with his mother for too long. Anyhow, I just wanted to wish everybody a very good Pesach Sheini, and that everybody who is feeling down in the dumps should not feel down, because really we are getting over this coronavirus. We are coming out of it. Mashiach will come, and all those people who are no longer with us will soon come back to us. I mean, it's very obvious that the type of people that left are the people that clearly just needed to be there in order to bring Mashiach, because if you just look at who's gone, I mean, it's like the greatest people have just left us. And we wishing everybody everything good.